Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for episode 11 of Groundbreaking.
Yeah, good afternoon, guys. This is your host, Rogelio Hernandez.
And Jacob Garza. So we're excited to bring to you guys a new episode today.
Yeah, the name of the episode for today is When You Should Stop Your Land Development Project.
When a project should not move forward. So we are actually located in a field office today, a little bit different from our normal location.
Yeah, this is one of our construction sites for GST construction. We're building a parking lot for South Texas College, and we're happy to have them as clients. And we're happy to be making progress on this project and be a part of it. Something that's going to be a lasting legacy in this particular case. Yeah, a lot of people are going to get educated here.
So the synopsis of this is really talk about, some of the issues that we have personally encountered during our development careers and some of the mistakes that we've seen others make. Share some of that knowledge with everyone around. And, we're not looking to pinpoint anybody specifically. We're looking to, share, what we believe can be avoidable errors. And some of these are errors that we've made, and some of these are errors we've seen. And we hope that everyone can take this as a learning experience so that we can all learn and improve from it.
I want to start with something else. I think nobody starts a project thinking that they're going to put a hold or a pause or they're just going to cancel the project. I think everybody wants to see their projects succeed and move forward, which is very important to recognize early lingering items or items that could take your project to a halt. So that's very important.
Yeah, I think usually optimism is really high at the beginning. And sometimes, especially when you have the money ready, it's very easy to want to jump into the first deal. It's in the perfect location. It's just the perfect, product that you want.
You own the land.
And you own the land or inherited it or whatever the case is, and you want to make it work. And it, you can really commit yourself to it. And sometimes it's not the right choice.
Sometimes walking away from the project could be the smartest decision
that you make.
It could ruin somebody if they're not being careful.
I think one of the things, not every project has to be built. Sometimes it's not the right time. Right now there's plenty of land available, for example, in the McAllen area that has issues as far as, drainage or other things. But, one day they'll come and they'll build a line. One day they're going to, dig a bigger channel that'll handle a lot of those flooding issues that property has. And at that time, that property becomes feasible. And maybe it's not feasible today, but in 5 years, it could be a completely different situation.
Maybe the numbers don't pencil out today.
They don't pencil out today, but later on, things change. The drainage district makes some changes. The area develops, and suddenly, the properties are worth significantly more in the area. And now it's worth
for doing the big investment to bring it up to compliance.
Knowing when to stop is as big of a decision. And sometimes you feel invested. We had a client one time that, they found the property and they paid for, I think, surveying and some other things. Once we sat down with them, we're like, look, you're going to have to extend the road. You're going to have to do this. He realized that, oh man, that's a lot more than I thought. And, if I do the numbers, it's going to cost me money to develop this for somebody. It's going to cost me $100K to make a lot, and I can only sell it for 80. I'm going to lose 10, 20,000 for each lot. It wasn't the right time. Maybe in the future, they build a road there. And
we're talking about the same project. If he just waits a few months or a few years, the road's going to be there.
And, once the road's there,
you can do the same development
and without having to build that road. And now the project is feasible.
No matter of waiting more time.
It's a matter of waiting, but sometimes you don't have that luxury, especially if you have an investment or you borrowed money and you need to make a return. If that's the situation, if you've already paid for engineering and done everything, it could be the opposite situation. Moving forward may be the solution that you need, and choosing not to move forward could cost you money as well. So those are some of the things.
Yeah, sometimes you already invested money.
Yeah.
I'm remembering La Feria, the project that we were spending some cash on surveys and doing some feasibility work, and suddenly we found out that the property had drainage issues, and the cost of improving the property to eliminate the drainage issues, it was going to be significant, and we decided to part away from that project. Even though we had already spent time and money into it, the best decision was to just exit the project. And sometimes that's what happens, and it's okay. It's part of doing business. It's part of land development.
Yeah. So I guess the key point there is the sunk cost fallacy, right? That you've already put money into it, and so therefore if you just keep putting more and get to the end, you'll make your money back. That's as much of a gambling problem as going to Vegas is doing the same thing here with development, in that you feel that you've already invested in purchasing the property, or you've already done the survey and you've paid for some engineering, and suddenly a gas line pops up midway through the project. It may still be cheaper to lose that money, but go ahead and sell the property as is, or wait on development, or find some other type of solution that could benefit maybe multiple people in the area. We've seen that happen with properties with drainage, where there wasn't good capacity for drainage, but between multiple properties, they can share the cost, and suddenly it becomes viable for everybody.
It just needs a few property owners that are willing to work together. That's hard.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could be property in the family for, says grandpa been in the family for generations and just want to develop it because it's belonged to your family. And if that's the case, and the property is not feasible to work, you just keep on keeping it that way. In the future, it may become feasible to develop it.
Yeah. There's situations where sometimes it's cheaper to just go buy a different property than it is to develop the one that you have. I think this is very common with a lot of things. My buddy, he has a boat that his father left him, and the boat is waterlogged. The engine doesn't work. And if he ever watches this episode, he's going to know I'm talking exactly about him. But the cost of fixing the boat, at this point, is $30,000-$40,000, and there's the emotional attachment to it, right? And obviously, it's cheaper to buy another boat, and if he really wants to get on the water, it's probably cheaper to just hire a guide. But there's the emotional, and sometimes we do get attached to certain properties or certain things, or a certain dream that we dreamt that this was the right thing.
I've seen some people wanting to build legacy on a subdivision or a development, and just bring stone from Greece because it's the one and only rose, whatever stone, make it all extravagant and expensive.
A lot of times people don't care.
Yeah.
It reminds me of real estate, where they say, there's certain line items that you can add to a home that increases the value at the same rate. You're talking about the front door, you're talking about front landscaping, you're talking about minor remodeling.
Net positive.
Yeah. On the bedroom, on the master closet, whatever, kitchen, minor remodels. But if you do an outdoor pool, you're never going to recover that money. If you add a outdoor kitchen, you're never going to recover that money, because not everyone wants an outdoor kitchen. Not everyone wants those professional grade stoves that cost $20,000. Most people are okay using a $500 stove. So, you're not going to recover some of those luxurious expenses that
I'm never gonna financially recover from this. Allowed to Tiger King, was it?
Yeah, Tiger King.
I mean, just because you spend the money on it doesn't mean people are gonna be willing to pay for it.
Yeah, so solar panels.
Yeah, solar panels.
I've personally purchased a home where they're like, "Hey, but we have solar panels," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm not paying for that." That's not just me; it's plenty of people that have no hate on the solar panels, but just.
You're gonna get canceled.
I don't want solar panel people coming after our podcast. But, just generally speaking,
whenever you send an appraisal,
they don't consider solar panels as an item that's part of the household value. So
it's an attachment that doesn't have any value, that they think it's an electronic, even though you're getting a benefit out of it. Is very commonly not something that appraises your property, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I guess one of the things is sometimes you want to move forward on things because you feel moving forward is right. And sometimes that's not necessarily the right thing. So just because your project's moving doesn't mean it's going in the right direction.
It all depends on your risk level too.
Yeah.
You could be more risk tolerant, and you may not be risk tolerant. Maybe you shouldn't be in the land development business. Whenever you're going into a land development deal, you need to expect or consider that things could go wrong. And during this process, you may lose some of or part or all of your investment towards the project. And so it's the cost of doing business in land development.
Yeah. And not all of them are winners, even. And you try to get into all winners, but not every project can be a winner. Some of the things to start looking for that are signals that a project, may need to pause or stop is, if you're doing the numbers and this came out and this came out and this other thing came out and, all kinds of stuff, right? There was a water line that suddenly you have to cross the road. We thought it was on one side. You have to, I don't know, bore and case it and, do major things. Suddenly the market drops for the value of the lots in that area. They build a very subpar product, a trailer park or something right next to where you're going to put in a luxury development. That could, all those types of things, some of them not in your control, can happen. And, during the process,
Maybe there's more competition in the area.
yeah, suddenly, hey, they open 2 or 3 subdivisions offering the same product you're offering. You may choose to wait, pause, or hold off a couple months so that you don't make a big investment and sit on that for a long time. And I've seen that happen. Actually, one of my family members got a really great deal on a home, struggling to see if the developer actually at least made their money back on that house because they bought a beautiful home. But the problem was that they built a bunch of homes in that area at that time, multiple developers. And so they ended up purchasing it I think the asking price originally was 340, and I think they ended up paying 295 or something. And so that house was on the market for a long time. Yeah, 8 months, 9 months. And it's a beautiful home. The problem was they built so much around that was more competitively priced. And so it made it difficult for that home to sell. And so they got a great deal. Unfortunately, the developer probably, didn't get a great deal just because timing. Had they finished their product maybe a year before, they probably would have gotten what they asked for. So
It's happened that there's been moratoriums on some cities where they restrict the development on specific product. I know one of them was for multifamily units, and then they lifted sometime later, right? But at that time, whoever already got approvals to move forward with those subdivisions.
suddenly they became much more valuable because you had a limited quantity basically because there was no more being built. So if you were the last ones into the game on that case, you probably had a better deal, right? You were able to make more money than someone that, came in earlier where there was more competition. So it works both ways. There's not only bad things, there's good things. Same thing. Maybe you were playing across the road with the water line and it turns out it's on your side and then, you save some money. So, it can work both ways. And that's part of the risk sometimes, and you can minimize that risk obviously by, doing good surveying and good engineering. Typically, good engineering, good surveying costs you more.
Good.
So it's trading risk for value.
Good planning, I would say.
Yeah.
Have contingencies, time contingencies, money contingencies. Because problems do arise.
Yeah.
There's delays.
So what are some of the signals? I guess one of the big ones is when the numbers don't work anymore. You start taking into account all these things and you start to see massive margin erosion. Your costs go up and up, and your sales are either remaining where you originally planned, or they're going down. Those are big issues. And the other big issue is if you're on a timeline, you have a 1-year loan, you have a very short-term balloon loan, and you got to get that loan back. You start getting delays, and suddenly your loan runs out, and what do? You're put into a very difficult and uncomfortable situation as a developer.
I mean, delays is a hard one. Most projects do have some delays here and there. But
Yeah, and you should plan for them because no project is ever perfect. Every project's going to have that rain that happens at the wrong time that pushes things back. Every project's going to have
the rain that keeps on raining every time you want to test caliche.
Yeah, we have that happen pretty frequently recently.
Yeah, there was a few contractors I heard from.
Cleaning.
Everybody was working the caliche, and then it rained, and then the moisture levels went past above required, and they got dry again. Then it rained. The second signal. Sometimes you go to the city and present your project, and the city doesn't like it, and they don't want to see it in their city. Even though the rules and regulations may be in your favor, you're gonna be working against the tide. You're going to be swimming against the river. Those type of projects could be very long, very complicated, very stressful, and putting a pause on the project or passing on it may be the wise decision.
I would say things like having to coordinate with multiple agencies or coordinate with, private landowners for specific easements or for specific things to make your project work. We had a property and, there was two options to discharge. One option was to bring it through the front and, that cost us maybe $30,000 more or go through the back. The problem with the back is that it required an easement and it was $30,000 cheaper to go through that route. The problem is that acquiring the easement sometimes is more costly than going the other way. And so in this particular case, it was faster for us, or we decided that it was going to be faster to go through the back or through the front. So we went around having to get an easement, but that was something that was on the table.
Time, effort, and then dealing with people, especially people that don't need to deal with those easements, could be very frustrating.
Yep. Number three,
Market conditions have changed. I'm thinking right now of fourplexes. In the past, fourplexes were a big deal, and suddenly there was a lot of supply of fourplexes, and the demand shifted.
and softened.
Yeah, it's often. It doesn't mean that fourplexes are out. I think there's still
A big
clients.
market, yeah.
There's market for them.
They're not as hot as they were.
They were very hot a few years ago, and the demand softened a bit. And yeah, that's something that has
I
happened.
think another big thing is, the financing. Sometimes, it happens, especially if you're planning to do a subdivision and you were going to get a loan in 2020 to start and you started your whole process. And by the time your engineering was done, 6, 7, 8 months later, you went and saw your banker. You're like, "Hey, I'm ready to get that loan." And he's like, "Hey, well, it's not 4% no more. It's 9% to get your loan." And so that just doubled your expense on interest.
And that could happen on the construction side of things.
Yeah.
And maybe you were thinking of doing a subdivision where people were going to be building, $400,000 homes. And now the people that used to afford $400,000 homes on a 4% interest rate, they can't. They can only afford maybe a $300,000 home on a 7% interest rate.
So the people you're marketing to may have disappeared in the home you were marketing. The other thing is you did your feasibility at the beginning of 2020 and everyone's like, "Yeah, it's going to cost you $1 million to do the subdivision." And then after your engineering's done, you come back to your contractor that gave you that estimate and he tells you, "Oh, well, it's actually going to be $1.5 million, not 1 million." And
Diesel went up, labor costs went up,
Diesel went up.
resin went up, and
materials,
went up.
everything went up, lumber,
Caliche.
triple. Yeah. So, sometimes timing and financing, the costs change and that's a risk that needs to be contemplated.
And typically there's some elasticity on the market. Like if prices don't go up, on the cost go up, right? And maybe the cost of developing a subdivision, it increases by 25%. Maybe you increase the sales price of the lot by 25%.
Yeah.
Maybe people are going to be able to still buy the lots, right? But it's elasticity, and maybe the demand for that product is just went down because now it's more expensive. So it doesn't mean it's over, but developers need to be looking out for those risks.
Yeah. Another issue may be your project no longer fits the original goal. Your exit strategy changes. This is pretty common, and we've done this and made these contemplations on a project that we've had that we're like, well, what if we change it from multifamily fourplexes to condos, or what if we build the condos and we rent them, or what if if we're having to change the goal, is the project still a good project? Should we get out? And that's a decision you have to make.
One subdivision that turns into one phase and phase two.
Yeah, sometimes you need to phase out your projects if financially that's what makes sense and that's how you can move forward. Then that's the route you should take. It's another step. So I guess we'll talk a little bit about some of the costs that come from not stopping early or terminating a project.
Especially if you started construction, this could turn real fast, and especially if you took a loan or you leverage yourself into a project. Interest on commercial loans is is expensive. Typically, you do have a loan term that expires, and you're accumulating interest, and you have to be paying the interest, and it becomes like a snowball that everything's piling up on the wrong side of things, and could belly up your project.
So the biggest, losses that comes from development is sitting. It affects everything, regardless of whether you have a loan or not. Your ROI, it gets impacted.
Yeah.
If you double the time it takes you to do the same thing, even if it didn't cost you anything extra, your ROI gets halved, right? Because it took you twice as long. If you were expecting a 20% return on investment, now it's a 10. Even if nothing went wrong, your total ROI would stay the same, but your ROI on the yearly, I mean, at that point, let's say you're projecting 20 and it took you 5 years. Now your ROI is less than if you had just put your money in CDs, which are safe or a lot safer than this. And obviously, you're not being rewarded for the risk that you took simply because you sat on a project for too long, even if everything went well. Vice versa, if you had a project that maybe had a lower return, 15% instead of 20, and comes out on time, on schedule, well, that'll have a much higher ROI than when that was 20%, but you had to wait a year or two for certain things to line up. Sometimes knowing, not to go in or when to invest is key. So I guess how to decide when to pause or walk away. Some of the things that you can do, Rogelio.
We run the numbers with updated cost. Keep your budgets updated. I don't know, once a month, once a quarter, depending on your project.
Where you're at. I mean, if you're a year out from starting construction, a big
With
project, I
a
mean,
bigger contingency.
yeah, contingency. But I was gonna say you don't need to rerun the numbers every month.
Yeah,
If you're a year out, like yes, it's good to know maybe quarterly or maybe one time at the beginning and one time, once you have a design. And
I think every time you're making a big decision, it's wise to take a look at the numbers again to see if this still makes sense or something has changed that maybe you need to add into your budget or remove.
Evaluating the market honestly with yourself, the timing and the values. Be honest. I think sometimes hiring a third party team of realtors or something may be able to give you, if you have someone to help you with that can give you a real answer, not just what you believe and what you hope and what you want, but a true evaluation of what it's actually worth. And that could be
Being conservative is always a good thing whenever you're forecasting and preparing your performance.
listening to regulatory signals. I mean, if they're telling you they don't want that product, it's a bad idea because you're going to get into a lot of headaches. And it sucks because sometimes it's something that's allowed and it's something that you can do. And just because they don't want it, it's unfortunate, but it's an uphill battle.
Especially if maybe you're still not the owner of the land. Maybe you're still in your
It's easier to
process.
walk away at that point.
It's easier to walk away. And maybe you want to develop that and you're going to deny it in a few months because of a new ordinance. Sometimes you need to act quickly as well. We've seen that happen where there's a new ordinance just coming up and you need to act fast and take on the opportunity that's still available.
Yeah. So another one is, separate your emotions from your strategy. Wanting a legacy, wanting to bring in Italian stones and wanting to develop, grandpa's dream ranch into the subdivision that
Trying to save an old historical building.
that's expensive.
Be realistic. It could hinder your projects.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're not in it for the money. If you're in it that
For
purpose,
legacy, that's a totally different story.
yeah. But if you're in it to make money, then some decisions need to change.
And this episode has been
About
approached
as a developer,
as a developer that's trying to
trying to
make
earn
money.
money. So, and having a clear, I guess, idea of your bottom line. Your bottom line. Like, hey, I know that if I pay more than this amount, or if it's going to cost me more than this, I won't make money. So, don't flirt with that line. You have that line, and you know that if you pass that, it's time to get out or to move on, and try to find that line and find that before you actually purchase the property. So those are some, I guess, some clear times to pause, walk away, or think about it. I think one of the big things is if a project does feel forced, then it probably is being forced. You shouldn't have to force it to work, and you shouldn't have to say, "Man, if I can just get this one thing approved, then my project works."
Yeah.
If you're in that situation, then that's a really bad situation because you just need one thing to not get approved to ruin your project and ruin your investment.
As well, like sometimes clients come and they're in love with this property and, oh, we're going to make this beautiful subdivision or make this beautiful project, but they have a big problem where maybe it's flooding or there's no sewer or something's wrong with the property, right? And sometimes it's good to know whenever to walk out, and you can fall in love with another project. So somewhere else that the numbers will pencil. So keep that in mind. Like not all the properties are the same. There's two properties there that pencil out without headaches.
So if you guys know somebody that is struggling to decide on whether they want to keep a project or move forward or leave, please, direct them to this video or direct them to us, and we can help them and be straightforward and honest. Because ultimately, one of the monikers that we self-proclaimed is that a lot of our clients don't like us because we're the project killers. We kill their dreams and we kill their projects before they even start. And so
Honestly, I would rather kill the projects before they
kill their budgets.
they're struggling because numbers are not penciling out.
Yeah.
They're in bigger problems, right?
Yep. So I think that concludes this episode. Thank you guys for joining us for episode 11. And feel free to follow us on all the social web areas that we're located, whether it's Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. I think we're pretty much on everything. So feel free to give us a follow. And if you have any questions or looking into any development, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, subscribe.
Thank you. You guys can see